Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to the big news of the day. The topic for today is the Rajiv Gandhi assassination case, in which the Supreme Court has ordered yesterday to release one of the convicts by exercising its extraordinary powers under Article 142 of the Constitution. So, in this short and crisp analysis, we shall take a look at this important case along with examining the content and scope of Article 142. But before we begin, we have a couple of important announcements. As part of our ongoing Target Prelims free crash course, the second session for international relations related current affairs will be held tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. So don't forget to catch this session live. And on the 21st of May at 6 p.m. on the BYJU'S Exam Prep app, we shall be holding a live workshop on how to make effective notes while preparing for the 2023 exam. So to attend this free workshop, all you have to do is download the BYJU'S Exam Prep app and register by using the link provided in the description box below. Now coming back to the big news of the day, the topic is in news because yesterday the Supreme Court has ordered the release of one of the convicts in the Rajiv Gandhi assassination case. The convict, A G Perarivalan, had been earlier sentenced to death by a lower Tada court. Perarivalan had been held guilty of his involvement in the assassination of former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, which was carried out by LTTE suicide bombers at Sri Perumbudur in Tamil Nadu in 1991. In this case, Perarivalan had been arrested for procuring the batteries that were used in the suicide bomb, and he had been convicted with the others and was even delivered the death punishment. His conviction had been upheld even by the higher courts, but in 2014, the Supreme Court commuted his sentence to life imprisonment. Following this, he had filed a mercy petition under the provisions of Article 161 with the Governor of State of Tamil Nadu, seeking his release on humanitarian grounds as he had already served more than 3 decades in jail. And now, due to inordinate delays in deciding upon the mercy petition, and due to an ongoing dispute in the case between the union government and the state government, the Supreme Court decided to take the matter into its own hands by exercising its special and extraordinary powers granted under Article 142 of the Indian Constitution. Through these powers, the Supreme Court has ordered the release of this convict. So this brings into question, what is Article 142? Article 142 of the Constitution deals with enforcement of decrees and orders of the Supreme Court. As per the article, the Supreme Court, in the exercise of its jurisdiction, may pass such a decree or order which is necessary for doing complete justice in any case or matter that is pending before it. Any such decree or order passed by the Supreme Court shall be enforceable throughout the territory of India in a manner which shall be prescribed as per a law passed by the Parliament, or in its absence, in a manner as prescribed by the President. So essentially, it enables the Supreme Court to provide for complete justice in a case, even by going beyond its traditional powers, which might bring the judiciary into conflict with the powers of the executive and the legislature. The article also empowers the Supreme Court to secure the attendance of any person, or the discovery or production of any documents, or the investigation or punishment of any contempt of itself, thereby giving the court wide sweeping powers to even step into the domain of the executive and legislature if it is deemed necessary to provide for complete justice in a case. This extraordinary article started out as draft Article 118, which was later adopted by the Constituent Assembly on May 27, 1949. So considering these wide and unfettered powers granted to the Supreme Court under Article 142, several legal and constitutional experts have often pointed out that this article allows the Supreme Court to take up judicial activism, which sometimes could end up in judicial overreach into the domain of executive and legislature. The Supreme Court has used these powers in various judgments, and over the years, it has defined the exact scope and extent of these powers. These powers have been exercised by the Supreme Court in various important cases, such as the Premchand Garg versus Excise Commissioner of UP Allahabad 1962 case. While using these extraordinary powers under this case, the Supreme Court had observed that an order which this court can make in order to do complete justice between the parties must not only be consistent with the fundamental rights guaranteed by the Constitution, but it cannot even be inconsistent with the substantive provisions of the relevant laws and statutory provisions. So it essentially means that the Supreme Court can exercise these powers in order to ensure that the fundamental rights of the party in question is protected by the court, while ensuring that its orders are not inconsistent with the existing law of the land. In the A.R. Antule case of 1988, this interpretation was upheld again by the Supreme Court, and later in the landmark Union Carbide case dealing with Bhopal gas tragedy, the Supreme Court underlined the wide scope of Article 142 while ordering for compensation to the victims. The court had said that it was necessary to set at rest certain misconceptions in the arguments touching the scope of the powers of this court under Article 142. The Supreme Court had observed that powers under Article 142 are indeed extraordinary, but it is not inconsistent with the Constitution and the laws of the land. It essentially enables the court to do complete justice in a case where the other organs of the state might be failing to secure justice, which would be infringing upon the fundamental rights of the parties. So the Supreme Court's interpretation was that these extraordinary powers shall be applied only for extraordinary cases and circumstances, but the court shall ensure that the orders will always remain consistent with the Constitution and the existing laws of the land. The same position was reiterated in the Supreme Court Bar Association case of 1998, in which the court ruled that these powers under Article 142 were supplementary in nature and they could not supplant substantive law, meaning it is not a replacement for the existing laws, nor does it seek to build a new edifice or a new legal mechanism where none existed earlier. So, as per this interpretation, the Supreme Court is not seeking to step into the domain of the executive or the legislature, but merely carrying out its constitutional duty to uphold fundamental rights and to secure complete justice to the parties involved in a case. The court itself had observed that these powers cannot be construed as powers which can authorize the court to ignore the substantive rights of a litigant, and the court cannot be seen to be ignoring the existing laws, and nor can it be seen to be creating a new legal edifice which never existed earlier. So through these rulings, the Supreme Court has clearly laid down the content, scope, and extent of its extraordinary powers under Article 142 in order to uphold the doctrine of separation of powers so that the judiciary doesn't unnecessarily step into the domain of the executive and the legislature. In the case of Rajiv Gandhi's assassination, which was carried out by the LTTE, several key conspirators have been arrested, convicted, and they have been delivered with the death penalty. Many of these convicts have filed mercy petitions, which currently remain pending, and they have even led to a dispute between the center and the state government. In the case of Perarivalan, one of the convicts, after his death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment to the Supreme Court, he had filed a mercy petition with the Tamil Nadu governor as per the provisions of Article 161. Under these powers, the governor can grant pardons, reprieves, respites, or remission of punishment, or to suspend, remit, or commute the sentence of any person convicted of any offense. But as the governor failed to decide on this mercy petition, Perarivalan moved the Supreme Court in 2018, following which the Tamil Nadu government, headed by then Chief Minister Palaniswamy, recommended the release of all the 7 convicts. This decision of the Tamil Nadu government was contested by the centre, and as a result, the governor sat on the decision, and up until 2021, the mercy petition remained with the governor. In fact, in 2020, the Madras High Court had even reminded the governor that the Constitution had not prescribed a time limit to act on such cases and petitions because of the faith and trust attached to the constitutional office of the governor. The Madras High Court had warned that if the governor fails to decide, that the court might be even forced to intervene. Later, a similar warning was issued by the Supreme Court as well, due to inordinate delays in the case, and the long delays in deciding upon the mercy petition was seen to be compromising the fundamental rights of Perarivalan, which was contrary to the principle of complete justice, which the Supreme Court has been entrusted to uphold. Then finally, last year, the governor's office forwarded the mercy petition to the president, and ever since, the file has been lying with the president's office. So, after many years of delay on the part of the government, the Supreme Court decided to take the matter into its own hands. And by exercising its extraordinary powers under Article 142, it has ordered the release of Perarivalan. So, this brings our discussion to an end. Thanks for watching.